Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast for December 4th, 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil. This week there's no Peter Ryan on the intro, but that is because he recorded this podcast today, and so the logistics of listening through to it and getting the usual introduction ready were a bit difficult. What you will hear when I finish this brief introduction is Peter talking on December 3rd to Paul Smith from Quinn Growth Advisors and David Rickard from Everest Group. Both are senior advisors to companies in the CX and BPO space. Peter asked them about some highlights from 2025, and then he steered the discussion to their expectations for the key trends we should be looking for in 2026. It is early to be finishing the podcast for Christmas, but this will be the last full episode of the year because this is episode 399 and we want to bring you episode 400 together in the new year. So enjoy the predictions for 2026 and we will see you then in the new year.
Who can believe that 2025 has gone by as quickly as it seems to have? I can recall about 12 months ago when the CX Files decided it was going to do a bit of a roundup in terms of what had happened through 2024 and where the following 12 months were going to take us in the customer experience world. Well, here we are again. And I'm always a big believer in getting some of the best brains in the industry on one of these discussions. And to that end, I am very fortunate to have two great gentlemen join me. I've got Paul Smith, who is principal consultant at Quinn Growth Advisors. He joins us from his home office in Salt Lake City in Utah. Paul, great to catch up with you today.
Thanks, Peter. Great to catch up with you guys too.
And with regards to the other side of the pond, we have none other than David Rickard. Now, Dave is a partner at Everest Group. In fact, Dave, you and I just caught up for the very first time live about 2.5 weeks ago in London. Wonderful to see you again, albeit through the magic of a Zoom screen.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me and great to be here.
Well, listen, I'm going to ask very quickly, starting with you, Paul, to tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then, Dave, I'll throw it over to you. And then we'll dive into our thoughts about how the year has gone and where we're headed for 2026.
Oh, okay. So my name's Paul Smith. As we said, I'm a principal consultant at Quinn Growth Advisors. Quinn is a growth agency focused on helping small and medium-sized BPOs refine their go-to-market strategy, messaging, and their sales process to accelerate growth. We're a little different than other firms in that we focus on results and we work on a retainer plus commission basis. So we win when our clients win. So that's basically what we're doing now. And we're working, as I said, primarily with small and medium BPOs.
Super duper. Dave, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, so I'm David Rickard, partner at Everest Group. Everest Group are a research and advisory firm. And we help leading service providers, tech providers, and enterprises to look at the market, understand what's happening in the IT, BPO services space, as well as the GBS, GCC space as well. I specifically lead all of our research on customer experience, everything from marketing and sales through to customer experience, trust and safety as well. I've been in the industry 25 plus years. I spent 17 years on the buyer side at Microsoft. I've also spent 3 years consulting before joining Everest Group 5 years ago. So yeah, got a lot of focus in this area. Spent about 40% of my time with talking to leading enterprises, 60% talking to leading service providers.
Thanks very much, guys, for that quick overview about who you are to give some context to our chat today. Now, listen, one of the things I'm a big believer in is you don't know where you're going until you think about where you've already been. What's the other cliche? Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. Anyway, with that in mind, before we dive into 2026 and what 2026 is going to look like from a customer experience management perspective, I want to get a sense from both of you. And Dave, I'll start with yourself. What did you see as the key CX or BPO highlights over the course of the past 12 months? If you were to think about 2 or 3 things that really stood out for you within the industry, what would they have been?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting whether they're highlights, but definitely the things that stood out for me was definitely AI hype. I think that there was so much AI hype in the industry. I think that was a real challenge because buyers are a bit confused, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But buyers are a bit confused in the market. Everyone is saying they own customer experience, from the tech providers to the platform providers to the BPOs. I think that the other thing I would say is that the market has stagnated a little bit. I think that confusion has caused some delay in the market. So I think there's also a lack of differentiation. Again, that's something that we talk a lot about, but I'm not necessarily seeing the differentiation come through in the market. But also a lot more competitors hitting the space as well. In 2025, as I said, everyone seems to be talking about CX and AI and how that's going to drive the space. And then I think the other thing is around sort of buyer expectations from 2025. Again, I think buyers are starting to think about, okay, how do we get these services? There's a lot more focus in terms of how you get quicker value from AI, how you can start to leverage AI to drive that value, but we're not necessarily seeing it hit the ground. So I guess I'd say my highlights would be lots of interesting discussions, AI being the number one topic, but things such as, to say, thinking about data, thinking about governance, they're things also really sort of top of mind for people. What we're not necessarily seeing is it all coming through to delivery right now.
Okay, super. Thanks, Dave. Now, Paul, what about yourself? You've got an interesting perspective that you bring to the market, given your experience and given some of the work that you're doing. What would you say from your angle have been some of the key interesting, we could call them highlights, or just key interesting facets that have really permeated our sector over the course of 2025?
I think one of the things that I've seen the most, one of the trends that I see that is a little alarming to me, is there's a lot of hype around AI, as David said, right? There's a lot of attention to that, and I think that a lot of contact centers are kind of removing themselves from that conversation and feeling like that's not a conversation that they want to participate in. In reality, the market is being very aggressive by implementing AI. When I look at the increase in usage of AI QA tools or hiring tools, the market is really using these AI tools, and it's almost like we don't want to admit or really tell the market that, hey, you know what, AI is coming and we're doing it today. It's not as visible. It's not customer facing, but there's a lot of things that are much better about what we deliver in contact centers as a result of AI, right? Being able to review 100% of your calls as opposed to 20% has an immense value for our customers, and I think we don't promote that as much. We it's almost like we're afraid to talk about it because we're not doing it. And I think as an industry, we're doing it as much as anybody else is at this point. So that's one thing that I see.
Okay.
The other thing is, one of the things that concerned me about this year was I don't feel like we're stepping up to the plate, and of course this is partially driven by my expertise, but I don't think we're very good at delivering the message to our customers of what we really can do and how we can help them be better. We're spending a lot of time talking about what happened last month, but we're not giving our customers a good insight into, here's what we're going to do for you next month or the month after that or in the next year. So I think it's starting to show now is that we really need to start thinking in terms of how do we let the market know what the capabilities really are and how they benefit them. And I don't think we've done a very good job of that. And that's kind of alarming to me because I think that's what leads us to this place of, a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Paul, I think sorry, Peter. I was just going to say, I think, Paul, you're spot on. I think that your last point is the differentiation point I made. Well, I don't think providers are able to really differentiate themselves. And on the AI point, again, I think the research that we've done shows that AI is being used, but it's a lot of time it's agent assist, agent support, internal processes, but people don't want to talk about how it's impacting or directly impacting the customer because partly they're scared, partly because I don't think it is impacting the customer directly yet. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. But right now, it seems to be in those agent support, agent assist areas.
But
Yeah,
guys,
yeah, and it's
if I
interesting.
can just jump in on this one, it's an interesting point because Paul, you referenced the fact that there's a lot of work being done on QA, on say workforce management. I'm hearing a lot of great examples of training, and I think for me, one of the highlights of 2025, if I can just throw my 2 cents in here, is the fact that finally we are seeing the rubber hitting the road around this technology and the work it can do. But the reality is a lot of organizations don't want to talk about this stuff, don't want to reference or name check it because I hate using this expression, but it's not sexy as it would be in terms of wholesale replacement of agents, whether it's voice or non-voice. But the fact of the matter is being able to QA 100% of calls as opposed to maybe a handful. I mean, this is game changing stuff, and there's so much that the technology can bring to the operations, to the efficiencies, to making things better. And for me, I think one of the big concerning elements is the fact that while we are seeing some of these use cases, we're not seeing a lot of organizations, whether it's BPOs or otherwise, wanting to really name check some of these things. Guys, I wanted to ask you before we move into 2026 as well. Um, Paul, I'll start with you on this. What did you see as the most unexpected trend of 2025 in our industry? Did you see anything that popped up that surprised you as you reflect back on the past year?
I wish I could say a good thing, but unfortunately, it's going to be a
No,
bad thing.
everything's on the
Um,
table.
I think that in responding to this whole AI craze, I see a lot of BPOs going out and putting a face on it, right? So their website talks about it. They may be going to some conferences about it. But then when you look under the covers, there's not a whole lot there. And I think that in the attempt to be everything to everybody and be, way ahead of the market on AI, that people have put themselves in a position where they really can't deliver on the things that they're talking about. And it feels to me like take your time. This gets back to my past point, right? Look at the things that you have done and trumpet those things. Stop trying to be something that you're really not. Um, David and I both came from the tech area, right? We came from tech. Um, we do vision casting as a part of technology sales in that, Microsoft's probably the best at it, right? I'm telling you today about something I'm going to do in 3 years from now, right? But it's now set in your mind that I'm going to be doing it. So you don't move to somebody else because you know that Microsoft's going to provide that over time. And I don't see us being comfortable having that conversation. It's okay to say, hey, we won't have an outward facing chatbot for another 3 years that we feel is effective. Okay, but we know that it's going to be there in 3 years. So why not talk about it? So that would be my kind of thing that I've seen in 2025.
Super. Thank you very much for that. I think that's a really, really interesting point. Dave, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, when we were preparing for this and you asked about what surprised me, I was struggling to come up with anything really in terms of what really surprised me. I think what maybe the key takeaway for me is that 2025 didn't move as quickly as we thought it would in terms of the development. So, for example, we talk about voice quite a lot, and voice is still the dominant channel. We see a lot of revenue still generated. I think our data shows like 63, 64% of revenue is still generated through the voice channel for service providers. That's only dropped a few percentage points year on year. And when we look at the full 2025 numbers, then I don't think that's going to be that much lower than 60%. And so I guess my biggest surprise is despite all the AI hype that's been around a couple of years, Gen AI was going to decimate CX. I think that what I'm surprised about is how slow it's been to actually have that major impact on the business. And I think it goes to your point you were making just a minute ago, Peter. I think that you don't get the headlines for saying we've improved QA. You get the headlines for saying we're going to eliminate 200 agents, right? And that has a massive impact on the market. But it doesn't get the headlines if you say we're going to improve QA, although that's really important for a business, or we're going to improve training. But it's not getting the headlines because, as you said, it's not sexy.
Yeah, yeah, and as I think a little bit about how as we finish 2024, I wrote a report at the end of the year, at the end of last year around this time, and I said that the key word for 2024 was uncertainty. There was just a huge amount of uncertainty as it related to our industry, to the broader economy, to geopolitical stability. 2025, I think, has improved, but I would tend to agree. I don't think there's been a lot of movement. I think that there's been a lot of stagnation. I think I think people are liking to fall back on slogans and vaporware, and they're sitting on their hands when it comes to making major investments. So that sets us up nicely, gentlemen, for our discussion about the coming year, 2026. I'm very excited about it. I think that we're setting ourselves up really well for a banner year in CX potentially. But Dave, starting with yourself, what do you think are going to be the key trends to watch in our space as we kick off January in just a few short weeks?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. And I think we all do the 2026 predictions. And I think the challenge is that just because we move from December to January, things aren't necessarily going to change. Some of the underlying blockers aren't going away. But I do think that we're definitely going to, or expecting to see a lot of the AI pilots truly move into production now, not just on the agent assist side. I think we're starting to hear there is more appetite to start thinking about true agentic. So bringing together those end-to-end processes and using true agentic AI to deliver services. That's going to take a lot of barriers to break down in terms of breaking the front, middle, and back office barriers down. But I'm really excited by I think what we could do with agentic and how it could sort of really drive the discussion forward. I think we're definitely seeing the landscape shifting as we've got, as I was saying earlier, more players coming in. And I think that's going to take the whole of 2026 to really play out in terms of where do the hyperscalers fit with the tech players, with the platform players, with the traditional BPOs. So I think that 2026 is still going to have a high level of uncertainty. I think we'll start to see more real use cases for AI, agentic. I think we'll start to see a settling down of that confusion. I think as providers will get better at telling their story, picking up on Paul's point, I think they need to get better at telling that future-looking story. And I think the one thing that we haven't touched on that is really boring, but is going to be really important is when we start to think about the impact of regulation. I'm in Europe. We've got, I mean, the EU AI Act. You've got other regulations that will be coming in different countries. I think data sovereignty is going to be an area that has to be really tackled as well. So I think there's some interesting stuff happening. There's some positives around, say, the momentum we'll get with AI and agentic, but there's also some things to watch out for around that regulation, and then the providers bringing that level of differentiation.
Okay, cool. Paul, what about yourself? What are you looking for? What's on deck for 2026 from a CX angle that you think that anybody involved in our ecosystem should be thinking about?
I think that one of the things is I think there's going to be more segmentation that starts to happen. I think that there's going to be a cream at the top, and there's going to be the BPOs that are telling the same story, and they're not necessarily going to be the giants we think of. So I see a lot of inventiveness and ingenuity going on the smaller end, where they don't have such a big ship to turn around, so they can address new opportunities much faster. So I see that when it comes to the market moving forward, I think we're going to start seeing a differentiation between the ones that really are grasping how they take advantage. I think AI is a reality, and in 2026, that reality is going to become a little bit more important. And once again, it's having the story to tell about it as much as it is about delivering at this stage. So I see that I'm seeing there is a differentiation based on a lot of different factors, size being one, right? If you got a big ship you're trying to turn around, that's going to take you a lot longer to implement new things. So you have a lot of customers you have to convince. I think we'll see, and I don't know, probably at the end of 26, I think we're going to see more outcome-based pricing as a differentiator, so that customers can have that conversation at a higher level in the brand organization about the return that they're getting on that investment. I think that some of the AI things that we're looking at, I don't really believe that the majority of AI call centers are going to be doing a lot of outward facing replacement of agent stuff in 2026. I just don't see that happening. I do think that there is going to be some of that happens, And I think it's going to be more a reallocation of their resources than a replacement. And I think that's good for the market because it makes us get deeper with our customers. Because here's the thing you hear, I'm sure you hear this all the time. We all hear this. Well, if I have this automated, then I'll have my agents will be doing more mission critical activities than they're doing today, right? We hear that all the time. But I always ask people, okay, so name those things for me. Name those things that you say they're going to be doing, right? And who's decided that they're high value? Did you decide that, or did the customer tell you they're higher value? So I think there's going to have to be deeper conversations. I think that successful BPOs are going to understand the organizations they're working with to a deeper level so that they can maintain their staffing levels as much as possible and identify what are those higher level things that you will do for your customers. It's great to say it, but what are they? And I ask that question a lot, and I never seem to get a good answer what people think when they say that.
But I think that points to the fact that so many people in our industry, especially on the provider side, are just falling back on rhetoric and buzzwords and expressions and so forth. But Paul, you raised the point about differentiation. I want to unpack that a little bit because I think from a buyer standpoint, if I'm an enterprise buyer, that level of differentiation that we're anticipating for 2026 has got to be a good thing. That's got to be good news.
Yes. And I think I think it gets back to, like you said, there's a lot of buzzwords. We're saying a lot of things, right? We're talking about this technology and that technology. And what we're not talking about enough is what is the value of that technology to you? What is the value of me reviewing 100% of the calls as opposed to 20%? What does that do for you as a customer, right? How is that going to impact that budget line? And how am I going to retain more customers because of that? So taking those differentiators and assigning them to specific benefits for your customer, right, is I think how those differentiators come through. But you have to have a deeper understanding of the customer. So if you're getting on the phone and you're saying, how many seats do you want? And do you want customer support or do you want sales enablement? Well, you're not getting into the business. You're just looking at what is the thing that they're going to buy from me. And I think that's one of the things that the market really needs to step up to is really understanding the businesses we're working with, and then providing solutions for those problems.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I agree with you, Paul. I think the other thing that we need to do as an industry is buyers need to buy differently as well. I think that what we do is we talk about lack of differentiation, but if we're just sending out RFPs and saying what's your pricing, how does someone differentiate from there? How do you demonstrate? Because the problem will be is, and I totally agree with you, Paul, but what everyone will do is if they're able to talk about the business value, everyone latches onto the same messaging and everyone will still be saying the same thing in a year's time, just with a different tweak. So when you really start understanding, well, what is the business value to me as a buyer, then that's when you need to have those true solutioning conversations. And you don't get that if you just send out an RFP and ask for what's your per FTE or your per minute or your per hour rate. So I do think that's an opportunity for the industry in 2026 is to actually start to think about how you buy these complex services differently to get the true value. Because I also agree on the outcome-based models. We need to get there, but we've been saying that for 15 years and we've not really got there. And because it becomes too hard to do. How do I prove who drove the outcome? How do I measure the outcome? All those things. And then it goes into the too hard to do bucket and it becomes a hybrid model, which isn't really a outcome-based model. So I totally agree with you, but I think there is opportunities there to also buy differently.
Well, and I think the hard to do column needs more attention.
Yeah.
Right.
It does.
That's one of the things that I also see that we say, oh, that's too hard to do, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay where I am. And it's really the things that are it's the things that are hard to do is what's going to differentiate you. So do the hard things. And the other thing I'll add to that is in the tech industry, when I first started in the tech industry, it was RFP driven. Until software vendors said, you know what, I'm not responding to RFPs anymore. And don't bring me an RFP. I'm not responding to it. And then the buyers had to change their behavior because they weren't getting responses to their RFPs. And so I think it's partially on us to make that change happen when it comes to the buyer, right? Because if we keep responding, they're going to keep sending them out.
Indeed, indeed. And, I want to go back to that differentiation point for a second, because if I rewind a couple of weeks ago, Dave, we were lucky enough to have you as a speaker at the CX Outsourcers lunch in London. And one of the points you brought up was the extent to which some of the larger players that Paul was talking about a few minutes ago are just simply not coming to the table with that level of differentiation or perception of subject matter expertise that I think a lot of the buyers are looking for. And as I think a little bit about the nature of buying in 2026, and Paul, I'm going to go back to you on this one because I think you're doing a lot of work on this with Amanda Quinn, who you're partnered up with right now. The reality is that the more subject matter expertise, the more level of depth that a BPO is able to bring to the table on maybe a function or a vertical or a technology, that's going to be a sweet spot. That's going to be the sauce on the chicken, so to speak, as we move into 2026. And I tend to think that this is going to be an angle that members of the outsourcing community, if they're smart, are going to start picking up on and really acting upon in the coming 12 months.
I think here's the dichotomy there, right? I think for a lot of organizations, they do see the vertical and functional focus as being a positive thing. The flip side, though, is that they're also concerned with the fact that they've never used it before, right? So when they look at their portfolio of customers, they're all over the place. And so there's a fear about, well, if I don't take every deal, am I going to lose my business? As opposed to one of the things I think in 2026 is it's going to be a year where call centers have to come to the table and realize you have to invest. You have to invest in your business. You've been able to get away with it for a long time. And so I think I totally agree. And Peter, I think, that's our message is you got to focus. Don't try to be everything to everybody. But, as we all know, there's a lot of contact centers that have been trying to be everything to everybody, and going away from that now is scary for them.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Okay, guys, great discussion. I want to finish off with a question for both of you that I want to be a little bit provocative on. So as we think a little bit about the coming 12 months, as we think a little bit about how 2026 is going to play out, we all agree that there's some trends that are pretty clear and pretty obvious. But I'm interested, as somebody who's worked as a market analyst for pretty well all their career, what what is the one or two, what are the one or two things that we need to be thinking about that are lurking beneath the surface that should be on the minds of those in a decision-making role within the context of customer experience management? Dave, start with you on that one.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it can depend on whether you're coming from a buyer side or a provider side, and I can cover both. I think definitely from a provider side, the thing I'd be thinking about is actually there's a growth in buyers of a GCC mindset. So we're seeing a trend towards GBSEs growing, GCCs growing, and so there is competition coming from to service providers from actually people saying, well, we'll build that capability in house. And so that would be one thing I think is lurking under the surface, which is this interest in actually saying, well, do we take some of this work back in house, especially if we think in 5 years or 3 years time AI is going to do all of the large volume stuff, and we'll just keep the capability. So if I was on the provider side, I'd be wanting to look at that in terms of how do we combat that, or how do we partner to build that GCC capability in that scenario. If I was a buyer, I think I'd be really thinking about what if customers don't actually want AI. I think there's a lack of information about, we think AI is going to be the answer and everyone's running down towards AI and agentic AI. And I said at the lunch the other day, I'm not anti-AI, I'm a big fan of it, but I think you do have to use it where customers want it, or where it can add value, or where you make the experience much better and you give them something they didn't expect. But I think the other thing under the surface, which is I think there's not enough information about what the customers really want and how do they really want to interact with brands. And that's an area I think in 2026 we should all explore, to say actually how do customers actually want to interact with my brand, and where is it going to give them value. And that's where you focus your time and effort to make the journey better.
Okay, super. Paul, what about you?
Mine is more organizational. I think that that the market has been in a command and control environment for a long time, where all the decisions are made at the top and they're flowed down to the organization. And I think in this world that we're moving into, that's going to be impossible. And so I think we need to, the management needs to understand that there are people that need to make decisions about specific things in your organization that may not be you, or they may be contradictory to what you think, but they have a specific expertise that needs to drive their strategy. And I think too much I see where it's so heavily top down that the people who are actually doing the work don't have the input into the decisions that are being made for them. And I think if we don't address that, we're going to continue to be in this box of same old, because those people have same old. I mean, I'm sure David and I both have things that are like lighthouses for us. They're things that we've learned over time, and it's hard for us to unlearn them. And one of the benefits I get from working with Amanda is we're from completely different generations. And so there's new thinking that I get from her that I would never come up with talking to my friends, right? Who have the same kind of experiences that I do. The other thing is I think on the buyer side, I think that on the buyer side is make sure you're getting the value that you're looking for out of the BPO that you're working with. Make sure you have standards. So when I look at it, those are the two things that our BPOs need to educate our brands and not have our brands educating us.
Super. I'm going to throw one potential thing that I think
sense?
everybody, yeah, 100%. And I'm going to throw over an idea that sort of relates to some of the discussion we've had over the course of the past half hour or so as it relates to AI. Let's watch for the implication of a AI bubble, which I think could be very, very problematic for not just the providers, but also the buyers of technology over the course of 2026. We've been hearing about a bubble that's going to burst in the coming months, over the course of the past coming months. Let's see if it actually happens. Anyway, a big thank you to both of you gentlemen. It's been great catching up. Paul Smith, David Rickard, always nice to see you both and to get your points of view. I believe that we will be looking to have both of you on the CX Files again in 2026. So watch out for an invitation coming to an email box near you.
Brilliant.
Looking forward to it, Peter. Nice meeting you, David.
Yeah, and you.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.